Oh my gosh, I'm here with John Sharkey. Let's start this. Maybe if we do that, all the cool people will suddenly start showing up.
Yeah.
So John, we're here at the...
Motorbike goes by just as we begin to, that's what's going to happen.
Exactly. So we're here at the 6th International Fascia Research Congress.
Yeah.
Have we learned anything since 2007, do you think? How does fascia inform your work, and what's new?
Oh my God, is there a shorter version question that you could possibly ask me?
Let's start with, have we learned anything new with fascia, do you think, in the last 15 years?
Oh, I mean, we've learned so much in terms of morphology. Let's take one small area, retinacular cutis. You know, the distribution, these are small ligaments that go from the, you know this, but just in case,
no,
you know.
They don't know what anything that you've
your
just
listener,
said.
just in case your viewer.
They're like, what did you just say?
Yeah. You know, so from the fascia profunda, the deep fascia up to the skin. When you think to yourself, well, is it distributed, you know, evenly throughout the body, or, you know, is fascia different is it constituted different in one part of the body? And so that's been a revelation, because in terms of restrictions, that really helps. If you know that kind of anatomy, that really helps to shortcut things for you in your clinical practice. In terms of being able to get therapeutic responses. I thought it was really interesting here with Stu McGill. You know, he's now retired. Here he is.
What an icon.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And I mean, they got him out of retirement to come along. But so he's retired, right? But as he retires, what does he say? You know, he's discovered fascia.
Right.
But he's retiring.
Yeah.
You know, so it's funny the journey that you take. And I think you start out in the early days of your career thinking very mechanistic, mechanical, and you start investigating as he did and saying, well, hang on a second, it's not adding up, it's not making sense, and eventually coming to the same conclusions perhaps that the likes of you and I have. So what have you learned?
Well, I guess for me, you know, I started out very mechanical, you know, like that fascia was, I think I was more compelled with like ligaments and tendons and myofascia. And there was a turning point for me when I had pain where I started understanding fascia on a cellular level in this idea. I just remember when I had plantar fasciitis and I kept thinking, inflamed fascia, could inflamed fascia cause all of this pain? And if that's the case, there's no exercise for that. And like, where's that inflammation coming from? And is it inflammation? And so I kind of went down that rabbit hole of cellular science and the very microscopic aspects of fascia. And so that's kind of really shifted my thinking of fascia more as a global system rather than these parts. And so that I think just informs the idea of dynamic motion. And what I tried to ask, you know, kind of failing to ask this question, but to me, I think that the last piece of this fascial research that needs to really come out is what really is the fluid dynamics of fascia and that fluid flow, and how does fluid perfuse through this system.
Yes, so essential, such an important aspect. So when I was doing my class, what I was saying to people is that you know, we offer some therapeutic intervention, but then what we do is we get the patient, the person, to step up off the plinth and to walk around, and I call it fascia as a hydraulic pump. So now what you're doing is you just, I don't know whether I got this expression from, whatever, but you get all those kind of juices, you know, those juices going, and that's what you need to do. And of course, I said this to you earlier as well, of course, that movement is life, and fluidic movement is life. So that if you're not moving, then you're getting stagnation, and stagnation simply means that you get, like if there was a pool of water and it had been there over there for the last couple of days, maybe a dog could lick it, but you or I wouldn't be going, you know, to you know, it has to have been moving in order to kind of, you know, be filtrated and to be safe. So that's the way it is. And if we look out into the cosmos, we had to go into the cosmos, right? If you look out into the cosmos, anything that's not moving is pretty much dead. And things that are moving tend to have more probability, you know, of kind of well, Earth life, you know, rotating and moving through space. So movement is key, and you've got to keep the fluids moving so that when there is more movement, those, you know, whether it's cancer cells, which was a big part of the conversation, they can't really, you know, get a handle on things because, you know, things are moving at a particular pace. You sit down, you get stagnant, gravitational forces, you know, things start to become, you know, a cesspool of bradykinins, phosphate Ps, neuropeptides.
All of these things that all of you know all about.
Yeah, and then that just sets you up now for
That's
what?
it.
You know, for anything actually, you know, because cancers, for instance, have to have a starting point. So where do they start? Myofascial trigger points have to have a starting point. So yeah, I think that's more or less what's happening. So I'm on board with you with regards to that.
So, Leah, if you had to today, in a simple way, try to define fascia for the general public, what would you define fascia as?
Okay, so in University of Dundee, as an example, my alma mater, you know, even now, years and years and years later, they say, if people do meet me that I've never met before, they say, oh yeah, you're a fascia man. So it's funny. I mean, I never asked for for that little nickname. So that's what they call you, fascia man. But the funny thing about it is, I have to be careful about this now because I love fascia. I love talking about fascia, but fascia is not really. It's not a term that reflects exactly what it is that I want to talk about, because
it's a vehicle, right? It's a vehicle to get what you want to.
It is a vehicle.
Talk
so
about.
People say fascia and fasciae, right?
Yeah,
and fascia is but fascia is plural.
Right.
And
the fascias, right?
Yeah, so two, but there aren't two fascia.
Well, I think they're saying like fascias to me is when you're speaking of a piece of something. It's like it's a part of a piece that, but again, you know, you're in this biotensegrity world of saying it's all one big thing, and but again, if we you know, you can't only just say what's fascia. It's everything, and it's like because now we're further away from.
Yeah, we had that conversation a little bit last night. So if I'm working with surgeons and surgeons need to understand retroperitoneal approaches in surgery, then you need to be able to talk to them, you know, about the named fasciae.
Exactly.
The named fascia.
Where am I?
Yeah, and you know, is this a fascial structure? Even though there's no great agreement on an international basis, there's no great agreement because there are some people who differentiate between an aponeurosis and fascia. You see, but that's more I think that's more for the medical community. If we're talking about the movement and manual therapists, then I think what they're really about is they're about connections and continuity and relationships based on hierarchy.
Yeah.
So if a bomb went off behind us or a gunshot, which is less likely where we are in Canada, which is great, but we would do this. We wouldn't do this.
Right.
So that's part of that. When I say hierarchy, that's kind of part of the story of hierarchy and understanding the hierarchical relationship of the human body, coupled with understanding of the embryological forming of fascia, then you can really begin to start having a great conversation about how forces are transferred, and therefore when somebody comes to your clinic and they're complaining of a knee pain or shoulder pain, you have a set of strategies that you can carry out based on hierarchy to say, well, this is most likely, you have to body read them and all that, you know, so you body read them and you make a clinical decision to say, well, here's how I'm going to start, and here's my intervention. And if it's fascial focused, which of course that's what this is all about, you hope you're going to get to see a benefit of therapeutic outcome.
Well, and something that you've really just pointed out, like two things. This concept of hierarchy is like what starts first. And I remember there was a point when I had first started talking about fascia in the fitness industry, and I had proposed to this group that, you know, we talk about muscle imbalances, and could it be that actually there's a fascial issue that is actually causing muscle imbalance? And people were like, wait a damn minute. And I was like, you know, really, if you think about it, the fascia can become...
You mean there's a two-way system? It might be muscle fiber or nerve out, or it could be fascia in, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and then the second piece of that is also this concept of relationships. That what allows tissues, structures, and systems to have a relationship is fascia. Like, they don't call it connective tissue for nothing.
Yeah.
And so the relationship that it has is a piece that I think is still just starting to be uncovered. And my fascination since probably 2003, when I started really considering superficial fascia as a real conduit of sensory information and understanding how many sensory nerves are living here, all of the lymphocytes, all of the lymphatic flow that's moving from superficial fascia, that in my field of therapy, and of course people see my roller and they think, oh, it's foam rolling, and I'm like, well, we do a lot more breath work, and it's a very gentle approach. We're easing pressure in instead of smashing through fascia, because my belief is if you just clobber yourself with an elbow and you don't take the time to find leverage, to find tension and compression in a logical way, that actually the superficial fascia is sort of designed to resist that uptake of tension. Somewhere along the line, that sensory nervous system is actually going to do the opposite of what you want. You're going to tense up to your pressure, and you're not going to get
And
anywhere.
I'm on board with you, but to really put balance into it, I would say to you that there is research that also says that the other approach works, which is not something.
Exactly.
Again,
But is that a
resonates.
nervous system? But is that a nervous system response that if I cause you so much pressure that it actually creates a pain response or an inflammatory response, right? Like Graston technique, right?
Yeah.
But and in some ways, I think when you have a scar, actually, if a scar hasn't healed right, or it's still painful, sometimes inducing some inflammation there can induce a new healing process.
Exactly.
And I think that's beneficial.
If that's an informed decision, somebody who is mature and experienced, and they can make that type of decision.
Yeah.
And that's what sometimes what's called for is a kind of a, it has to be tempered and it has to be controlled, but it's a re-injuring almost of the tissue, because this stuff needs to be, I don't like this term, but with scar tissue you might do skin rolling to kind of break adhesion. So I don't like the idea of breaking it down.
Right.
What does that mean, breaking it down? You've got
waking it up, I like thinking.
Yeah, or changing these relationships. But adhesions, are commonplace. And then adhesion, if I pull on my top, it moves to the shoulder. But if I hold it here and then pull, it only goes as far as my fingers, so that could represent an adhesion, which then means that the natural sharing of forces is not occurring, and forces are nutritious and they're information to the body so that the body can carry out its normal metabolism. But when you have those type of adhesions, then that's going to lead to a change in the conversation and the story is taking place. And so now you start getting heel spurs, and you start getting overproduction of tissue. It's great. I have to share this because it's just, I find it always funny. So the Steckos have the word densification, you see.
Right.
So Carla and Antonio, but their English was so bad when they first started out, right? That's the word they used.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the room, this is going back years, and I'm going, densification, yeah, wow, fantastic, you see. And I started to think about it, and as you know me well enough to know that I had to go off and investigate the etymology of densification.
Right.
Couldn't find it in any dictionary.
Yeah.
There's no such word as densification. I was going, really? Because every single person that hears it, the second they hear it,
they
know exactly what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think what should happen now is they should add densification into the English dictionaries and give credit to the Stecco family who just invented it by mistake. It's a brilliant word.
Well, I think you're saying something here too that I think is really something I find in my clients. Like, you get this really big, strong dude who's been lifting weights all of his life, and then one day he wakes up and he can't raise his shoulder up, and this adhesive capsulitis, frozen shoulder, or whatever. And these types of biomechanical crazy oddities that happen in the body are still to this day, I hear people say, oh yeah, I went to this therapist and he's like cranking on my shoulder and it hurts so bad. And I'm like, did it help? No. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So
why?
Why do we think that just cranking and pulling and doing these things is really going to gain the benefit? Is it now time for physical therapists and people who aren't, in this fascial community, but creating these tools, like the girl with the stick, and she's telling people to scratch at their fascia and bruise themselves everywhere. And I think, oh my gosh, you can't just take a little bit of information and just make it a fact until you do a little bit of due diligence. It's a tough call, but I think there's a lot of people who are in the fitness industry who feel they've done everything right, and then all of a sudden have pain, and then they're like, what happened? But is it inflammation? Is it the fascial system? Is it the nervous system? And what's really happening? I think Roberto said it. It's like, there's a lot to learn in anatomy.
And that's exactly the way it needs to be. So again, the hierarchy, if you can understand the hierarchy. So for those people who are, tuned in and who are in fitness and who are prescribing exercise programs, just bear in mind that a lot of this information has not actually made its way out into the fitness industry. And in certain parts of the world, perhaps in Germany, for instance, fascia is well established and well recognized and people talk about it. You go to other countries, Denmark, Sweden, perhaps, and it's really, less heard of, etc. So we need to get the message out there. But just as a little gem, as an example, somebody goes into the gym and they do their traditional training, so their bicep curls, etc., etc. And what they do is they wait a day and then they to recover and they go back in. Fascia recovers at a different rate. It has a different temporal aspect to it, a time aspect to it. And so this is one of the things that's happening. I mean, it's kind of, there's a multitude of variabilities here, but what happens, for example, is that they go back in training on where the muscle fiber has recovered very well, and that could be well due to the fact that it's well vascularized and gets, you know, good nutrient-rich blood supply, but the fascia hasn't recovered. So now you're training on top of tissue that hasn't recovered. So really what this is doing is it's moving you to what we would call overtraining or under-recovery or staleness. So people need to be aware of that and make themselves more informed. So really go out of your way to start finding the research. And quite a lot of research is out there, which is free of charge. Some journals like JBMT you have to pay for, but there's a lot of research that's out there that's accessible that you don't have to pay for. So I think you need to make that effort to try to inform yourself, you know.
Indeed. Okay, so last question. If you had to say to somebody, I know we can talk forever, but we're going to do an Anatomical Gangster, a full podcast. So if you had to say to anybody who's listening right now, if you're like, just, good message, what would you say is something that you would tell anybody in this day and age to do to improve their tomorrow? What's the most important thing to do every day?
The most important thing to do every day is to just appreciate the people that you love around you. Try not to be something that you're not. Don't be pretensive. Recognize that I just think there's too much greed, and people have. There really is. There's just too much greed, and coronavirus, I think, has taught an awful lot of people. I've had people back in Ireland and elsewhere say to me, I'm just thinking of one of my students back in Waterford, and he said to me, John, he said, I was working, now these are mature people, by the way, who come through these courses, they've already got careers and families, and he said to me, I was working all the hours that God sent me, and I said, really? He said, yeah, I was missing out on special occasions with my kids, etc. So, just, be honest with yourself. Try to avoid letting money be your motivation, and just be the best that you can be, because you want to contribute to the community within which you live. That to me, and I love community and I love contributing to community. And then I think if you do that and you do the best job you can do, well then you earn a reputation. People talk about you and they appreciate that. And I hope that's not too naive, but I think then that the other things then take care of themselves.
Yeah, I think that if you are your most authentic self and you're offering out something that you have, which to me is like saying, love yourself and love everybody around you, because the more you act in that, you actually bring more of those wonderful people to you.
And you have to invest time and effort too. If you want to be good at something, then you've got to invest time and effort at being good at that.
Yeah.
But it's not about chasing the buck. It's really about quality of life. Please try your best not to avoid missing out on, putting work ahead of family. There's nothing more important than family and friends.
That's right.
Just nothing more important than family and friends. And
life is short and fleeting. Enjoy it while it's
short and fleeting. It's a great gift that we've been given, But
it is a gift. It is a gift. I love you, John Sharkey. I'm so excited for the future of coming to Ireland, and we've got to do something.
Yeah, we got to get
Let's
to
go to Ireland.
Absolutely. And also, there's a few other people I'd love to think about getting over. But
I think we do like some sort of a
little event or something. But obviously Melt on its own I think would be fantastic. And we've a beautiful, where myself and my wife live, we've a beautiful hotel down by the sea. And I think one of our other graduates, Aubrey, had Eric Dalton. I believe that they had him over, which is great to see. Aubrey. Yeah, he's a great guy, and his sister's a great. I've always had great respect for those guys. They do a great job. So maybe we could get you there, because it's it's right on the sea. Lovely.
I think that's what we do.
We've got to work towards that.
All right, I'll see you all in Ireland. Well, John, how do people find out about you if they want to learn more about your amazing work?
Oh wow! I mean, one, you can just put in John Sharkey anatomy or dissection, something like you'll get Facebook, and then JohnSharkeyEvents.com. And I'm in the Ohio State University in November.
Yeah.
That's this November, and then next June, a really special event. Myself, Carla Stecco, and Robert Schleip will be in Italy, in a place called Cremano. So why not integrate that into a?
That might be where I will be in June. Now that you're saying that, I mean, I might actually crash Ohio, but Italy sounds a little bit better. So
Yeah,
I'll see
yeah,
you there.
yeah.
All right. Well, until I chat with y'all again, stay happy, stay healthy. See you soon.